Welcome to CBC Asks. Here is tonight's MC from CBC Radio 1's The Debaters, Steve Patterson.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for gathering in the center of this lovely building. Welcome to this. It's CBC Asks. This is the first one we've done, so this is going to be the best one ever, I'm relatively sure. You guys ready for this? Me too. I was honored when the producers of the show, the news department, actually asked me to become involved in a show that involves debating, because as you know, I moderate debates on another CBC show, and sometimes we don't get invited to serious events. So it's an honor for me to be invited to this one. It's the first in a series of live debates produced by CBC, obviously, that we're hoping will engage Canadians in key issues. And tonight's debate is a tease or a kickstart to our upcoming federal elections. I don't know if you knew that. We have one this year. Did you guys know that? This is being live streamed on CBC News.ca. So not only are you 10,000 people that are here seeing this, but millions around the world are live streaming this right now. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people watching this. Later in the show, there are quite a few people watching this. Later in the show, my man, Sir Peter Mansbridge, he was knighted this afternoon. Peter will be taking questions from the audience on social media, so let's get that tweeting started whenever something happens tonight using the hashtag CBC Asks. I thought it was going to come up. It's CBC Asks with a little tic-tac-toe game in front of it. Tonight's topic is politics broken? Don't vote yet. We're coming up to that soon. Is politics broken? We are trying to decide whether the political process is still as worthwhile as it used to be. And we're not just going to talk about Canadian politics tonight, but global politics, which is politics around the world, not the goings-on at Global Network. We don't care about that. Also, we're going to celebrate the fact that this public forum is happening and accessible here tonight. And obviously, there are a lot of serious things being debated all around the world right now, and we can't cover them all tonight. There are some serious things being debated in the House of Commons right now. And from personal experience, I can tell you that staging debate and getting the right, and equally important, the left people to engage in verbal sparring is the best and most engaging way to come to a resolution. To put it another way, I think that debates should be entertaining. I think it's nice when people say something that's not only relevant, but entertaining. Otherwise, there's very little reason to listen to it. That man agreed with me, and that's all I care. I will entertain all of you individually tonight, including those who are watching from their computers without pants. Now, here's something that's being debated right now. Bill C-51 in our government. They're not here. They're not here. Bill C-51 currently being debated in the Canadian House of Commons. Should our government be given access to every resource and technology possible to root out terrorist activity before it takes place, even at the cost of innocent citizens' privacy? Many say no. Stephen Harper and his 4 apostles say yes. Justin Trudeau sort of says yes, but not very loudly, because he's been advised to not say anything right now. And Tom Mulcair, the leader of the opposition, firmly says no, because that is what leaders of the opposition do. You say no. Do you want to do this? No. I am opposed to that. I'm the leader of the opposition. I see a privacy issue as a little ironic in a time when a lot of people are more than happy to share every inane detail of their daily lives via social networking. No offense to our hashtag, CBC Asks. From the food they're about to eat to the exact locations of where they are at all times. Maybe you shouldn't do that. I guess what I'm saying is, if you are truly concerned about governments infringing on your privacy, maybe don't make it so easy for them. Have face-to-face conversations in the basement while the laundry machine is going, like they used to on The Sopranos. Maybe just eat your food instead of taking a photo of it first, because I'm not even a terrorist and that makes me want to hurt you. The real problem with today's generation is that the word selfie is now a word in the dictionary and the word someone elsey is not. You didn't like that? It's okay, we'll edit it out. How do you edit a live stream? Good question. On the show that I host, The Debaters, we have debated topics that are important, such as big oil companies, whether males can be effective feminists, and the civilian use of drone technology. We have also debated seemingly less important topics, such as pie versus cake, apple juice versus orange juice, and recently, whether William Shatner is the best actor in history. The interesting thing is that our comedic debaters put equal effort into the preparation of their debates, no matter how important or not important the topics are. And as such, our audiences pay equal attention to each debate and think as hard as they laugh. So to me, the perfect debate is the perfect combination of funny and fact, laughs and logic, and well-placed sarcasm and puns. The current crop of politicians, sorry, I paused there to insert crowd laughter. We got too presumptuous. The current crop of politicians certainly have upped the entertainment factor in the world. Benjamin Netanyahu won an election immediately after saying he would never on his watch have a Palestinian state, and then immediately said he never said that. After winning the election, not only did he refute that he said it, he just pretended he had never said it. A politician that makes a promise during a campaign and then immediately pretends he didn't do it? Weird. But that's got people angry, including President Obama, who may not now be Benjamin Netanyahu's BFF. He has threatened Benjamin Netanyahu. I will not be your BFF. Bibi? I don't know why it's called Bibi. We all know who Benjamin Netanyahu's BFF is. It's Stephen Harper. He has sung to the man, for God's sakes. He has serenaded him with the song Hey Jude in Israel, which is an odd choice to sing to a group of Israelis, but way to go, sir. I don't mean to be biased towards one particular politician, but I have a favorite politician. He happens to be in the NDP. I wouldn't care what party he was in. He answers questions and does things in the House of Commons that I'd like to think I would do in the very unlikely event that I was voted into the House of Commons. I'm talking about the NDP's Pat Martin, who, oh, I love it, very recently, during a vote in the House of Commons, he left after voting in a question, and he was angrily asked why, and he stood up in the House of Commons, and he said, "I'm sorry, everyone. The underwear I bought at the Bay were too tight, and I had to take them off." Beautiful. That is my kind of politician. I love it. That's my man. In fairness to Pat Martin, he had just been debriefed on how to create a wedgie issue in an election year. You see? Puns! Puns, everyone. All right. We're going to get on with the show now, if that's all right with everybody, because this has all been just an appetizer to the main course. Tonight, we have yes and no teams. There's teams of 3 on each side of our resolution that will debate the facts, followed by, they have opening arguments, just like we do on Debaters, followed by members of the yes and no teams taking one question from each member of the opposing team, which on the Debaters we call the bare knuckle round. But obviously tonight is more civilized. Wrapping up, we're gonna have closing arguments from each side, and the best thing tonight is that the audience here tonight, you folks, will decide the winner. You will decide the winner by voting before and after the debate, because debating is about swaying people's votes if you can. That's why you debate in the first place. The winner is decided by which team sways the vote the most. So the debate statement for tonight, under the topic Is Politics Broken?, is The political process is no longer the most effective way to enact real change. We have 3 people debating, yes, that's true. We have 3 others debating, no, that isn't true. And you folks will decide who the winner is. How will you do this? Well, as some of you have realized, attached to your chairs are voting devices. You might not have known what those were. It's pretty high tech. Those are voting devices, and you are going to be using them. I say using them, I want to be very clear. Do not take them home, please. For the love of God. We are CBC, not Oprah. You do not get to keep them. But you will use them tonight. You can vote as many times as you like, but only the last entry will count during the voting time. So if you vote yes and then have a second thought and think, well, maybe I meant no, the last number you press will be the vote that you register. Before you do your pre-debate vote on the motion that we've just shown, we're going to do a little test. But I wanted the test to be a little more fun than the actual question, maybe a little bit more complicated. So the question is this. Who is your favorite CBC personality? Who is your favorite CBC personality? Be honest. Is it A, Steve Patterson, B, Steve Patterson, C, Steve Patterson, D, Steve Patterson, or 5, Peter Mansbridge? Place your votes now. The last number that you press will be the vote that's registered. We want to make sure these things are working, and we'll see what you guys think. I'm not sure how long it takes, but probably pretty soon. It's a good thing we did a test. The winner was Peter Mansbridge with 48% of the vote. And this has shown you the danger when 2 parties split the vote on the other side. Because my combined votes, I think, are higher than Peter's 1 vote. But all right, he is a knight after all. You guys win this round. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all know what's happening now. I hope I've explained it okay. We can't wait to get this first debate started. Let's meet our debaters. What do you say, everybody? Okay. First and foremost, we're going to meet Team Yes. Please welcome a man you're going to be seeing a lot of over the next few months on the National's At Issue panel. It's National Post columnist Andrew Coyne. Andrew? Our next Team Yes member did a record number of interviews with federal MPs and somehow stayed awake long enough to write a book about it called Tragedy at the Commons. Please welcome Samara Canada co-founder Alison Lote. Alison, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And shoring up Team Yes tonight, a man whose TED Talk has been viewed 1.5 million times, making him almost as adorable as a cat. Please welcome community activist, rabble-rouser, and man about town, Dave Meslin. Welcome, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be Team Yes. They will be defending our resolution for tonight. Now from Team No, the team striking down our resolution. She's tangled with the likes of John Crosby, so look out, Team Yes. Please welcome former Liberal MP and Deputy Prime Minister Sheila Copps. Hi, Sheila. Thank you for being here. Now from Team No, once known as the funniest MP on the Hill, he had the last laugh when he loaded up the truck and moved back to God's country. Please welcome former Conservative MP, Monty Solberg. And finally tonight, she's a political strategist, host of a weekly pop culture and politics show, Politini, and former fundraiser to more than 50 members of Congress. Please welcome Aisha Moody Mills. Thank you for being here. Have a seat, please. Have a seat, please, debaters. Right. I'm not allowed to sit in this chair because I'm not actually moderating this debate, but it's nice to meet you guys. I've met you briefly backstage, and for those who think that this is not just fun, right? You guys both want to win. Can I just verify you guys are serious, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aisha is,
My
Monty
mic works,
is.
yes. Apparently.
Yeah. Sheila, are you ready for this?
Frankly, my dear, I really give a damn.
Oh, you really give a damn. You switched it up there. Okay. Now, have you guys had a chance to meet up, really, and work together? Or?
We did a little huddling beforehand, strategizing.
Okay. I'm worried about you. I know, I've watched you. This is going to be tough. You realize that it's still supposed to be fun, right, at the end?
Yes. We'll all be friends afterwards.
Oh, good. I like that sound. Monty?
I'm ready.
You might be the wild card here, because you had almost no voice just before this.
I'm going to rally. I'm coming up, especially with the new euthanasia laws, I'm nervous. I want to rally.
It's an interesting way to start, Monty. This is perfect time for us to open our pre-debate voting on the motion. We're going to vote on our voting devices using button number 1 if you are in support of Team Yes for tonight's resolution, or button number 2 if you're against the motion, along with Team No. So please place your votes now. Remember, the last button that you press is your vote. While you're doing that, before we reveal the results of the pre-debate vote, we're going to take a look at this snapshot of what Canadians are feeling about politics right now.
Starts with a hard one.
But as long as they don't do the same stupid thing twice, I guess we can't really fault them for being human.
For the most part, no. I actually don't want to sit down and have a beer with the people who lead the city or the country. I want them to be way smarter than me and way more connected than I am.
If there were more naturalized citizens that were in power, that would represent us on all levels of government, it would be better. Because right now, the politicians don't really look like the immigrants or the average Canadian.
Politics affects me every day. It's like air affects me.
Politics affects everything.
Politics is affecting us everywhere, I think. Yeah.
Things like healthcare, education, and things all across the board.
I think everyone who relies on the political process to make all of change isn't doing their part in helping change happen.
Will I vote? Of course. Of course I will. Yes. Will I work for a candidate? Yes. Am I already committed? Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I am a huge believer in voting. Perhaps. It depends.
If I don't vote, then I wouldn't have exercised my right as a citizen.
You know, if you don't vote, then you can't really complain.
Okay. That's how some people... Was that you?
That was him right here.
That was you. I just saw you on TV. you say yes a lot. Congratulations, ma'am. All right. The pre-show vote results, I imagine, are in by now. I'd like to see them. This is how the audience feels going in. The political process is no longer the most effective way to enact real change. 69% of the audience here agrees with that, saying yes. 31% say no. So we've got a lot of swaying to do.
We have nowhere to go but down.
On one side. Yeah, one team could only screw this up. The other one could really bring it about. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce a man who towers above all others in Canadian news because he stands while all the others sit. Please welcome Mr. Peter Mansbridge.
Good job. That's about the script.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you
That's the script.
to all of you here tonight. You guys better be good. You better not just be smart. You got to be funny to follow that act. He was terrific. Listen, it's really... it's a big deal for me to be here tonight. Usually I'm 4 floors up, getting ready to do the National. I'll still be doing the National tonight, but I didn't want to miss this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate all of you coming out to watch this, and I appreciate all of those who are watching online tonight, because as you know, we're live streaming this event at CBC.ca. Please grab it if you can, and also don't be shy about sending in any questions you may have, because we'll get to questions off of social media later in this program. And the place to send those questions is to hashtag CBC Asks. You know, when you talk about is politics broken, when you kind of go through the question that we've been talking about tonight that you heard Steve mention, you know, there are a lot of different things come to mind. here's what comes to mind to me first, because I think for a lot of us in this room, we've either been in countries or we've seen television reports from countries where we've seen on voting day people lined up for blocks, some of them crying. Why? Because they suddenly have the right to vote. They've fought for that right. They've watched people die for that right. And in some cases, some people are still dying for that right to vote. So when you watch those reports come out of countries where the voting turnout is 95, 96, 99%, and then you look at what's happened in North America, where the turnout rates have dropped. And the last one we looked at in Canada was 61%. That was actually up from the time before, but 61%, meaning that almost 40% of Canadians who were eligible to vote chose not to. Now, there's a lot more to this question, as we're about to find out, than just whether or not you vote. The bigger question of whether or not politics in our country is broken is an important one with lots of aspects to it. We're going to hear them tonight. Now, you saw the opening totals of your votes here in this room. Was it 69% think, yes, politics is broken? 31% say no, it's not. Now, how are we going to determine who wins this debate based on those numbers already? Well, the big number at the end of this won't necessarily be the winning side. The winning side will be on who sways the most vote. Get it? So if it ends up going from 69 to 31 to 60-40, that would be a big sway towards the no side. It's not broken. And I think, as I heard Andrew say, as those first votes were announced, we can only go one way down. Well, not necessarily. There's some pretty good debaters on this side, just as there are on that side. So we're about to find out just how they'll perform. The statement up for debate, once again, the political process is no longer the most effective way to enact real change. That is the question. That is what our debaters will try to argue tonight. The format, very quickly once again, 7 minutes for each team to open their arguments. Then each team will get to question the other team. One question from each to one on the other side. Then I'm going to go down into the audience, get your questions, and take some of the questions that are coming in off social media. Then closing statements, and then you get to vote again. So that leaves one area that we haven't covered. Who starts? It's kind of like the Super Bowl, right? It's a big deal, depending on where the wind is, who gets to kick, who gets to receive. So we met about an hour ago, and we decided that's the way to make that determination. Here's what happened. We'll show you. Give it another. I didn't want to hit the ceiling. Yeah. Are we ready? Here we go. It is a tail. Woo. The no side has the choice whether they want to go first or second.
And we will receive.
We'll receive.
We'll receive. So we're number 2.
You're number 2.
Right.
Okay, that's clear. The yes side will start the debate. The no side will respond all the way through.
Oh, all right. That's great.
You got the first advantage.
All right. So you heard it. Yes side will always open up. No side gets to come in to rebut. That's how it'll work out. Time-wise, my role is pretty simple here tonight. I just got to make sure everybody stays on time. And I'm going to have you help me out. It's going to be a little like, the Oscars or big award shows. As the countdown happens on this opening one, on the 7-minute segment, in the last 10 seconds, we'll see a countdown clock and over the last couple of minutes, so they'll see it as well, but you got to help. We couldn't afford a band. but you're going to clap for us, okay? In the final 10 seconds of the kind of a rhythmic clap down, so they know they've only got 10 seconds left, and we'll do the same thing in the other segments where they have much less time. So I've already been monitoring Twitter, and some of the lines are, you know, is the debate ever going to start? It is going to start. Right now, as we open up with the yes side, they've got their 7 minutes. They can use those 7 minutes any way they wish. You know, they can have Andrew do karaoke. You know, they can do whatever they wish. The floor is yours. Team yes.
Thank you, Peter. The question is not whether politics can change things. Of course it can. Some kind of change, however ill-judged or chaotic or high-handed or frankly insane it may be. The question is whether it will be the right change. Change that's in the interest of the broader public rather than a clutch of narrow interest groups. Change based on genuine popular input rather than the machinations of a few. Change, last, for which those responsible can be held to account afterward. Now, you're going to hear a lot of heartwarming stories tonight about people who, working together, managed to achieve real change. And it's true. For the people politics works for, politics works. If you're a cabinet minister, you think politics works just fine. If you're the head of an influential activist group, politics works for you. If you're well-heeled, well-funded, or well-connected, no doubt politics works for you as well. But for most people, well, how well is politics working for you? If the person you elect as your member of parliament has no real power to represent you, how well is politics working for you? And don't kid yourselves, they don't. They can't vote on legislation except as the party leader tells them. They can't examine bills properly before they vote because they're all folded into one big omnibus bill. They can't debate them because debate is routinely cut short, sometimes after a couple of hours. They can't propose bills with rare exceptions, can't ask ministers questions, even make members' statements except as approved by the whips and from scripts that have been written for them. If the policies you voted for are not the policies a party enacts in government, if the promises they make at election time are routinely and regularly broken, how well is politics working for you? And I'm not talking about minor details, I'm talking about major election promises. If you voted for the Liberals because they promised to scrap the GST, or if you voted for the Conservatives because they promised to restore accountability to government, how well is politics working for you? If you've given up on voting altogether, as more and more and more Canadians have, how well is politics working for you? Maybe you don't vote because you know MPs are irrelevant, or maybe because you're tired of being lied to, or maybe you don't vote because you know your candidate is going to lose, or is going to win, because the result in your riding is a foregone conclusion, as it always is, because you live in one of those safe ridings. How's politics working for you? Or how well is politics working for voters who are told in election after election that they can't vote for the party they like, but rather must vote for some other party they dislike for fear of letting in yet a third party they detest, the dreaded vote splitting? How well is politics working when the parliament we elect looks nothing like the parliament we voted for, when 38% of the vote gives you 60% of the seats and 100% of the power? But I don't want to be Mr. Negative here. If you leave out voting and elections and parliament, politics works pretty well in this country. If you're okay with all the real decisions being made behind closed doors by party leaders and their unelected advisors, if you relish the thought of elections that are about nothing but attack ads, photo ops, attack ads, and endless discussions of campaign strategy, if you're positively giddy about what our politics have become, the talking points, the bragging, the feigned indignation, the sucking up, the talking down, and all the rest, well, then politics works for you. But if you're one of those people, as my colleague will now explain, you are increasingly in the minority.
It is true that it is now a minority of us who are involved. In fact, most of us are diverting our energies elsewhere. There is increasing evidence that Canadians who care about issues and want to get involved are doing so in ways that are completely disconnected from government. A report card on the health of democracy, released today by Samara, shows that our political system now repels more people than it attracts, particularly young people. Take voting as an example. In the last election, only 39% of Canadians under the age of 25 cast a ballot. That's 39%. Far fewer are members of parties or are active on campaigns. And consider the most basic form of engagement, a very simple conversation. Young or old, nearly 40% of Canadians said they did not talk about politics, not once, in the past year. I have two other points I'd like to make. The first, Canadians have very little faith in their political actors. About 40% of Canadians say that they don't trust their elected leaders, our political parties, and believe they largely fail to perform their jobs. When my Samara colleagues asked Canadians what grade they'd give MPs across 6 areas of their responsibility, things like holding government to account or debating legislation in Parliament, Canadians gave MPs a passing grade in only one area, representing political parties. I hope every candidate in this year's election commits to taking this report card seriously. I'm quite sure that no one runs for office hoping to be known only as a parrot of political party talking points. And second, Canada does not have a culture where political participation is encouraged or supported. We place a low priority on civics education, for example. We celebrate volunteers and entrepreneurs, and rightfully so. But we dismiss those who take their time or take risks on their ideas through politics as mere partisans. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars helping immigrants build lives here, and spend next to none of that money introducing them constructively to our democratic system. I vividly remember participating in a community conversation with a number of people who had recently become Canadian citizens. One brought his Discover Canada guide, which anyone applying to be a Canadian must study. He observed how little space was given to Canadian politics, and as it turns out, there's more attention paid there to the beaver than there is to encouraging people to get involved in politics. But just because politics is broken today, it doesn't mean it can't be fixed. The good news is that there are many signs of strength on which we can build. Citizens are brimming with ideas, as my colleague will tell you later on. Many high-caliber, hardworking people put their names on the ballot. And more than any of us on this stage care about winning this debate, we hope that we can convince you that this is an important provocation to help repair our broken politics.
Thank you. Team Yes. Dave will be warming up in the bullpen for his moment later on. Let's move. That was very good. Let's move to Team No right away. And Aisha Moody Mills starts.
Whoa. Let me help you there.
Hold on.
That's okay. We can edit this out.
Teamwork.
Got it? Oh, it takes this
Your
broke and just the
microphone is broken.
microphone.
Politics is hard. This is hard work. Peter has multiple jobs around here. Look at this.
Not very well either.
Technical support. Technical support.
Meanwhile, I'll just tell a short story. I was going to tell it with Steve's introduction. It leaves this impression that somehow, like everybody knows who I am, and so he doesn't have to give a real introduction. Well, that'd be nice if it was true, but I actually know it's not true, and here's why. Every once in a while, I, head up to my cottage early on a Saturday morning, and I get carried away driving. A couple of years ago, I suddenly saw an RCMP officer, well, actually an OPP officer behind me. Lights flashing, stops the car, pulls me over, says driver's license, registration, all that stuff. I give it to him. He looks at it, he goes, "Peter, Mansbridge." And I'm thinking, man, I love this job. He says, "We were in Scouts together. 1964 in Ottawa," and I had been. We started talking, remembered all the same people, jamborees, camping trips, the whole bit. We talked for a couple of minutes, and then there was this pause, and he looked at me and he said, "So, what do you do now?" So I never assume everybody knows who I am.
There, you're good.
And I haven't thought so much about scouting either, since he gave me a ticket as well. All right.
All right.
Away you go. Sorry.
Thank you, Peter. So here's the thing. I get it, right? You guys are cynics, rightfully so. You think the system is a disaster. You think it's broken. But here's what I want to implore on you. Think to yourself, what is the alternative? What is the alternative system? The most enduring ideal of mankind, really, I think, the most successful tool that we know in our society is democracy. This system of government where we, the people, have power, where we, the people, can actually elect our representatives, and then we, the people, have the right to go and petition the government and then decide that, you know what, we're going to hold those representatives accountable to our will, is a powerful system. It matters, it's real, and it's ours. Now, democracies are fueled by politics. And sure, we know that the political process isn't perfect. It has some problems. But here's the thing. The fundamental reality here is that the ideas behind our democracy are not broken. Democracy, and thereby our politics, are in fact the most powerful and, to quote the question here, the most powerful tools to enact real substantive change. And that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. What is substantive change? As my teammates and I are going to remind you, it is because of democracy and the political process that we have things like health care, that our roads are paved, that we can even stand here in front of you and have the right to be able to debate our system of government. Now, we may not like the tone or tenor of every single debate that happens in the political sphere, specifically where I come from in the United States, where it's gotten to be this heightened vitriol and where politics is so polarized that a lot of people are just completely turned off. But as President Bill Clinton once said, there's nothing wrong with America, and certainly our political process, that cannot be fixed by every single thing that's right with it. And here's the thing, y'all. We can't afford to just sit on the sidelines and be cynical, because it's actually through the friction of political debate that we get big, bold policy ideas. And it's those policy ideas that then become laws, and it's the laws that strengthen and safeguard and secure our society and our day-to-day lives.
If you don't like politics, and if you don't like the public policy outcomes you're getting now, the solution is to get involved in politics. That's how you enact real change. If you think that politics isn't democratic or just or fair, then guess what? The way to fix that is to get involved in politics. It's the conceit of every age to think that politics isn't, to think that the politicians have never been worse, or that the previous age had a better system. But it just isn't so. 2,000 years ago, the poet Juvenal complained that politicians could too easily distract the public with bread and circuses. People complaining about politicians is hardly a new thing. And yet in the Western world in general, our political system has created a society that has grown more fair and prosperous with every generation. Living standards have never been higher. We have extraordinary opportunity. Our political system created the environment to make that possible, and it continues to do that today. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have reforms to the political system. We absolutely should. And that happens from time to time when a political figure rallies enough political support and wins enough seats to make that happen. Politics provides a legitimate avenue for dissent as opposed to, blowing things up when the existing political parties don't represent certain points of view. Politics was the vehicle for the creation of the CCF and the NDP, the Reform Party, the Bloc Québécois, and now the Green Party. In turn, they changed the discussion and brought about important changes to the country. Very few people bother to get involved in political parties, but they should. I know some people say that they don't trust the system or politicians. Fair enough. But isn't that the reason why you should get involved? Why would you leave the running of the country to people you don't trust? when it's completely within your hands to go about and have your say. Canadian voters are not victims. The ability to create change is in your hands.
Canada started off with an idea amongst politicians. 2 peoples, 2 religions, and 2 languages would make one country. That was a vision of politicians in 1864. We are now in the most racially diverse city in the world, and people get along. And there are lots of other places in the world where that is not happening. ISIL seeks chaos. ISIL seeks to go where there is no politics. And the reason that we have been successful in Canada is not because we're better than other places around the world, but we put in place laws to guarantee that the minority had equal rights with the majority. We have a public broadcaster that by a law that was passed more than 70 years ago publishes in television and radio on 2 official languages and multiple Aboriginal languages in the North. We passed a Multiculturalism Act, which enshrined in 1970 how we would learn to live together. We asked the CRTC to implement laws to see ourselves reflected on the airwaves. It didn't happen by accident. It was a decision of multiple governments, from the condemning of apartheid back with the time of Brian Mulroney to current policies today. The only place that real change can happen is in politics. And to all those nattering nabobs of negativism, I would ask them to suggest, if not politics, then what?
Well done.
All right. The opening statements from both sides, and both within their 7-minute time limit. And 2 of them are politicians. It's amazing. Okay.
Recovering.
Are you ever an
politician.
Are you ever an ex-politician? All right.
We're in the 12-step program.
Okay, we're moving now to the sort of second element of this, and that's where each side gets to question the other. 3 questions from the yes side to the no side will start it off, and then the no side gets their opportunity to ask the 3 questions of their friends on the yes side. So we're starting off, and Dave, you going to start it with your first question?
Sure, yeah, this is a question for Sheila. I'm reading a great book right now by someone who's very critical about the current situation of politics in Canada. He talks about how some of our legislatures are a parody of democracy, a charade. This wasn't written by some kind of rebellious, anti-authoritarian anarchist. It was written by the former finance minister of Nova Scotia. He says, "I've never worked in a place as thoroughly dysfunctional as the Nova Scotia legislature. 51 grown-ups act in ways that, if repeated in their private lives, would end their personal relationships, and if repeated in other workplaces, would get them fired. Visitors to the gallery often go away shaking their heads in bewilderment." When our politicians, senior politicians, are admitting that the system isn't working from the inside, isn't that a red flag? Doesn't that really answer the question tonight, just from his own words? Graham Steele from Nova Scotia.
Well, I don't know Mr. Steele, but I do know that he left his party with a bit of a sour taste in his mouth. I did the same thing with my party, and I wrote a book. I wrote 2 books. The second book actually has a chapter that is devoted to my relationship with a former colleague. And it wasn't a very pretty relationship at times. And so if you wrote that book, you might come away from that thinking that this is my story. My story is not everybody's story. And if one person comes away from politics with a sour taste in their mouths, I can probably produce, within a very short notice, 100 people who have come away with a positive taste in their mouth. I lived that with my party, and I came back because I do believe that the only way to affect change is through the political process. And so, yeah, you get down, you get knocked down, you pick yourself up, and you keep on going. But I don't think the anecdotal evidence of a single autobiographer should color this debate. We should really be looking at the substance of the alternative. And I'll just briefly quote Winston Churchill, who said, "If you're not a socialist when you're 20, you have no heart. If you're not a capitalist when you're 40, you have no head." And some of us have used that échéancier, as they say in French, young people looking at life from a different angle, and over time they change and they mature, and now that I'm over 60, I'm looking at it with a much clearer view than maybe I took with me when I started.
I was wondering how long it would take before Churchill got brought into it. Somebody who kept changing parties all his life.
Exactly.
They call it ratting in Britain, right? But he used to say, you know, anybody can rat once, but it takes a real talent to rat twice. And I think he did it 3 times. Next question, Allison?
I will take it.
I think it's a question from them, isn't it?
No. We do 3 here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who's the moderator?
Yeah. Come on, eh?
There's a small rebellion on stage, apparently.
The way the rules were explained to me, it's 3 from you.
Good.
And then 3 from them.
Sorry.
Because you're first. And they're second, you lost the toss.
Yes, okay.
All right, sorry. And Allison, you got 1 minute for this,
mind.
and 2 minutes on the answers. So go ahead, Allison.
Aisha, thank you so much for coming to our country today. And thank you very much for reminding us about the importance of the ideals of democracy, which I think on this side of the room we would also heartily support. But as you rightly note, it is politics that is the fuel of our democracy. And if we don't have in place the processes, the parliaments or Congress, the systems, the parties that Canadians are willing, or citizens in your case too, are willing to support and be a part of, how better might we achieve the ideals in our democracy?
So I would say that the beauty of the democracy to me is that it is this constant living body, and it's up to us as citizens to perfect it. So it doesn't sit well with me, this idea that it's okay for us to just be disenchanted and say, you know what, forget that legislature, forget that Congress, I'm not going to participate in it at all, because the truth is that unless we own some sense of responsibility for showing up and participating, then we can't just sit around a Monday morning quarterback and cry and be frustrated when things aren't going our way, and when we're not going to those bratty babies who are sitting in the legislature bickering and arguing with one another and holding them accountable. Just like your research found, the truth is that so many people don't participate. Our turnout rates in the United States are just as low as they are here in Canada. In a presidential election, when you only have 57% or maybe on a good year 60% of the voting age population showing up, then that's really telling about how the people value their own voices and their own participation. I think we need to have a little bit of a give and take of, you know what, we have some responsibility. We've got to not think that the legislatures can just function on their own and dismiss them, and we have to hold them accountable. And then at the same time, I think that we need to realize that this system is not as stagnant as it feels. The truth is that those rules that govern the way that we do our policy making grow all the time. That is the point of the way our process is designed. And so it's not hopeless, it's not hapless. We just have to constantly be a part of the experiment, and it's a process, it's not a destination.
Andrew.
Monty, I'll refer you to a study that appeared a couple of years ago in another leading newspaper where they tabulated how often MPs in the House broke ranks from the party line and voted as they saw fit. And they gave the Rebel Award, if I can put it that way, to your colleague James Bazan, who in roughly 1,000 votes in the House broke ranks with the party line exactly 8 times. 99% of the time he voted with the party, and everyone else voted more often with the party than he did. We have the most rigid system of party discipline in the democratic world. The point is, this is not just 2 years after the Conservatives came to power, it's 20 years after the Reform Party, which you were a prominent member of, came to Ottawa vowing to fix this, to give more power to individual MPs, more democracy to the House. You spoke very feelingly about if you don't like the way the system's working, get involved, you can change things. Would you say, having done so, that you succeeded in changing the democratic policies and practices of the House of Commons?
Well, thank you. That was an easy question. You know, I mean, the way you've characterized this, Andrew, I think is actually quite unfair. I mean, if you look at what members of Parliament do, and listening to your description, you would have this sense that things break down party lines every time, And there's never any sort of real debate or discussion, that the opposition never agrees with the government never agrees with the opposition, but it's not true. Like everyone here, you followed very closely the progress of Bill C-46. No, you haven't. No one has. It's the Pipeline Safety Act, right? And it just passed second reading with unanimous consent and went to committee. And why did that happen? Because there was a lot of discussion at committee. People agreed that on balance, the bill was really quite a good bill. It affects hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. So this is a sort of a good example of how, where most of the work occurs on committee, there's always these sort of democratic discussions. There's real debate. Things get amended. Often they get defeated. There are ideas that come forward. So I don't buy your sort of caricature that you've painted, that it's all one way. And finally, I would go back to my original point. You know, if the public wants to do something about this, it's within their ability to do it. And you do that by joining political parties, getting involved, and pulling those levers.
All right. That wraps up the questions from the yes side towards the no side. Now it's the no side's chance to go after the yes side. And is Aisha starting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So my background is, if anyone ever Googled me, would see that I care very deeply about social justice. So we agree on many things. In terms of young people in particular, the power of the people to go out and to organize and to create energy outside of the traditional political process in order to get things done. My question is then, when we see, like, you know, in the United States, we have Black Lives Matter right now movement that's really big and bold. We saw Occupy Wall Street in the past. What then, if you are suggesting that the political process isn't the way to actually create substantive change, do you encourage young people who are demonstrating, who are eager to have their voices heard around an issue, to then do in order to achieve substantive change? Because it seems to me that, you know, I would love to hear from you, how do you drive a policy agenda or drive some kind of policy imperatives around all of the issues that, you know, you all support around advocating for, if there's no mechanism in place like government to actually move those?
Are you directing that at anyone in particular?
Dave.
Dave.
Okay.
This is right up Dave's
Actually,
alley.
that's what I do. I'm a community organizer. I work on political, nonpartisan, non-electoral campaigns to bring people together to work towards change. The democratic process involves those people in the streets organizing, but it also involves the people in the legislatures who in the end vote. And there's a great quote here that you started with: "We the people can elect our representatives." The problem is, in Canada and in the US, we use a system called first past the post, where we don't fairly elect our representatives, where the desires of the people don't translate into seats in government, where in the last Canadian election, the vast majority of Canadians voted against the incumbent government. 60% wanted change, only 38% wanted the Conservatives, and they won a majority of the seats. In most Western democracies, when a party takes power against the will of the majority, it's called a coup. And it's a bad thing. Here we call it an election, and we publicly finance the whole thing. And just to be clear that I'm not taking a partisan jab, you know, the same goes for other parties. In the 1993 election, the opposite thing happened. Kim Campbell's party at the time only won 2 seats, with 16% of the vote. She should have had 47 seats in that election. Elizabeth May should have 17 seats right now with her party. So, unless we implement some kind of proportional representation so our votes do matter, all those movements on the ground convincing people to vote a certain way means absolutely nothing. I'm sorry, that's the reality.
And, you know, it's worth remembering that I think it was 1984 was the last time in Canada that a Canadian government was elected with a majority of the votes. And that was like 50.1 or 50.2%, Brian Mulroney. Who's up next? Monty?
Sure. Thank you, Peter. I'd like to direct my question to Andrew.
Shocker.
Turnabout is fair play.
Andrew, you write columns and are routinely quite critical of politicians, and controversy sells, and conflict is good in the media business. But have you ever written a column about the good work that happens on committees and the cooperation very often that goes on, getting together to decide what recommendations should go into the Finance Committee's report to the Finance Minister, those kinds of things? Maybe talk about that.
We get this a lot in the media. Why do you always focus on the bad news? Why don't you focus on the good news stories? And the usual answer to that is, if we ever started reporting on how many planes landed safely, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Plane crashes make news because they're exception. The problem here is the good news is, in this case, the exception. I'm sure you can find a committee that is doing good work and passing amendments and is actually cooperating. But if you're talking about committees that are going on right now, as you did, we might mention the committee examining Bill C-51. One of the most contentious pieces of legislation that has come before this Parliament, freighted with all kinds of important considerations for civil rights and human rights. And the original proposal was to have 3 days of hearings in the committee on it. 3 days. When the Liberals brought forward their security bill after 9/11, we had 19 days of hearings, and I recall complaints at the time that that was enough. They were shamed into extending it to 8 days, but we all know what's going to happen. At the end of the thing, there's not going to be a single amendment allowed. It will be shoveled through the same way as bills have been routinely shoveled through, because the committees are controlled by the party leaders, in this case by the majority party leader. It was a little different when we had a minority government because they couldn't quite ram it through. But we see this with debates being cut off. We see this with bills being pushed through with, as I say, as part of omnibus bills, where they can't examine them properly in committee because they've all been, jumbled in with 200 other bills. So it's great, Monty. I'm absolutely sure that there are exceptions to this rule. There are examples of committees that work well. There are examples of MPs who managed to get their bills passed, private members' bills, 4 in 2 years versus 537 that were defeated. So I guess the question is the glass 1% full, or is it 99% empty?
Sheila Copps.
Okay. I have a question for Alison, because you
I'm the only one left.
Characterized. Samara came out with a poll today showing that people aren't engaged in the political process, and in particular focusing at the disinterest of young people. My grandmother did not have the right to vote, and I became the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. Through what lens are you looking at this time frame of disinterest in the political process and how the whole thing is broken, when we grew up in a time when women were never engaged and never involved, and now they're very engaged and very involved, and young people historically have been busy living their lives, not necessarily being focused on politics. So what's the sort of historical reference to validate those conclusions?
I think you raise a critical point that democracy is a process and things change over time. The report that we put out today looks very broadly at a number of different indicators to try to assess the health of democracy. And we invested in that project because if you look at any international ranking of democracies, Canada rightfully appears close to the top, or at the top in many. Well, not actually, we're never at the top, but close to the top. And for good reason, because there has been incredible progress here, and we do have a wonderful country, and preserving that is important. But it is very hard to square that, unfortunately, with a lot of what the research shows. You asked about young people in particular. As long as Elections Canada has been tracking the participation of young people, it shows that actually young people usually participate in smaller numbers than adults, and that's been forever thus. But what is changing is that they are unlikely to ever start voting. So what has changed is that we are, for whatever combination of reasons that we at Samara are very dedicated to trying to understand, we are educating and bringing up generation after generation of people to be completely checked out and disengaged from politics. I think, like you, like everyone I think in this room, we believe politics is critically important, but if we don't act with some vigilance toward our system to understand how it can be more open and more participatory and work for more people, then I think we do put our system at risk.
Okay. All right, so you've heard their questions for each other. You've heard their opening statements. They are going to be thinking about their closing statements, but we want to get your questions now for the two sides in this debate. So I'm going to come down into the audience where the real people are. Okay? And here's one right here. So if you could start off by just giving us your name and where you're from, and away you go.
Sure. I'm Mika Buckley-Pearson. I'm a graduate student at the Monk School of Global Affairs. My question is for Team No. So as I'm sure you're aware, only about 25% of our federal parliamentarians are women. Is this because they aren't nominated as candidates at the party level, or because they don't get elected? And what are the implications for the political process?
Sheila.
The issue is not election by the people, the issue is nomination. And in terms of party process, there was a very important document written in 1988 which looked at how to change that exponentially. And one of the elements was actually financial assistance, public financial assistance in the nomination process. We've gone the opposite way, but the reality is that political parties are less likely to nominate women, but once women or minorities are actually nominated, they have a slightly better chance of getting elected than white men.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I'll just add
It's
something.
really not to you guys. But
Sure, I'll just add something really quickly, though. Municipally, we don't have nomination meetings. Yet if you look at the 50 largest cities by population in Canada, you would think about 25 of them would have a female mayor. It's not 25, it's not 20, it's not 15, it's not 10, it's not 5. Out of the 50 biggest cities in Canada, 4 have a female mayor. That's 8% with no nomination meetings. So I think it's part of a very big problem of lack of representation in government, which is part of politics being broken.
All right, and just to ensure fairness here, I will make sure that the no side gets an opportunity to rebut one of the yes side questions as well. And here we have our next question.
Excuse me, my name is Jamil Giovanni from Toronto. I'm a lawyer and a community organizer. I have a question for the yes side, actually. We talked about Occupy Wall Street. We talked about Black Lives Matter. One of the criticisms somebody could raise about those movements is that they did not have a specific ask of the political system, of politicians, and that maybe it is a lack of faith in politics and the fact that people do believe that it's broken is an impediment to actually getting something changed. And so I would ask to you, do you see that there is a deterring effect of some of what you're saying that might actually have a negative effect on engagement of young people? That as they do hear politics is broken, and if they do believe that's true, then movements like Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, in some ways are self-fulfilling prophecies that they won't make the change that they have the promise to.
Allison or Andrew, who wants it?
Maybe I'll start and Allison can finish it.
Okay.
It is absolutely true that I think political parties remain essential as a part of the political environment. It can't just be, as Dave was saying earlier, it can't just be movements in the streets. It can't just be extra parliamentary groups. Those are useful, those are helpful, those bring issues forward. But ultimately, things have to be resolved in something where we all have to meet together, where we all have to mediate our differences and can't just make our own demands 100% maximal demands, but we actually have to compromise with each other. So we're actually arguing here for the system that we have or thought we had. We're not here to remake some radical new utopian vision of politics. We just want the parliamentary system and the party democracy that we thought we had. We're trying to say to the parties, you need to make yourselves relevant again, particularly to young people, particularly to members of minorities who are not voting in the same numbers, to give them that sense that there's efficacy in joining and working within the party. It's not up to people outside the party to change their mindset. It's up for the parties to reach out to them.
And I think can I just clarify that? So it sounds to me like what you're saying is in fact agreement with us in that the political process is indeed the best way to have sustainable change.
No, it could be.
We need to work that.
It could be.
One day. It is. Okay.
I just wanted to, Jamil, thank you for your question. I just wanted to pick up on another point you made, which is about how the negativity around politics can be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that's very true. There isn't a culture, I think, in Canadian politics that encourages engagement in a meaningful way for a lot of people. It was mentioned at the introduction, my colleagues at Samara and I did a collection of exit interviews with former MPs, and even MPs have absorbed this narrative, many of them. When we asked them, why did you decide to run? only 1 or 2 of them said, you know, I thought politics was important and I had my eye on a way I could contribute. Most of them said, oh, I didn't plan to run. I was asked, I had to be begged, I didn't want to do it, I was kicking and screaming. Now, I know what they were saying is that I know people look down on politicians and I was trying to be different, and I sincerely think that they were. But the collective impact of that narrative on people is very, very pernicious. If somebody who served in the House of Commons can't stand up and say, it was a critical thing that I did and I was very proud of it, then I don't really blame young people for checking out.
I participated in the exit interviews, and I have to take great exception with how you've characterized the exit polling, because when I was, yes, I did. I participated in the exit interview. In 1993,
it must have been a different project from ours, but sorry.
The Samara project I participated in. In 1993, I was tasked with recruiting women candidates. And we actually took the Liberal caucus from 15 to 26% women candidates. And every single woman that I went to had not thought about running. So we had to go out and actually ask people to run, and they said, me run? I hadn't thought about it. I was asked. We aggressively went out and sought women and minorities because we wanted to change the face of Parliament. If you merely leave that to somebody who thinks that they have a trajectory in their lives, then you get the professional political types. And so you have to go out and try and seek new faces who wouldn't necessarily see themselves. And that's not a bad thing. That reflects on a democracy that represents not just the professional people who are training to be politicians.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do one more here. Did you have a question? Well then, come on down.
My name is Keith Newman. I'm with the Environs Institute for Survey Research. I have a question about political polls. There are some people that say that political polls are bad for democracy and the political process because they distract us from the really important issues that we need to focus on. There are other people that believe that polls are really good for democracy and the political process because it's the only way for everyone, not just the party insiders, to really know how candidates and parties are going over and really give a sense of collectively how everybody's looking at it. So there's good and there's bad, but and this is to either or both teams. On balance, are political polls good or bad for democracy? And is there some way to make them more effective?
Okay, let's focus on the first part of that question. Are they good or bad for the political process? Because I'm sure if we get into the debate about how to make them better, we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
Monty?
Thanks very much, Peter, and thanks for the question. I think one of the challenges is to get the voters to think beyond the strategy. And it's fascinating for people in the media and for politicians to talk about the strategy, how their ads are impacting the public. But of course, just to build on something that Allison was saying, my view is that people should be idealistic when they go into politics. They should have some things they want to accomplish. And ideally, voters should be idealistic. And those are the things I would like to think that people focus on. The big issues, not the strategy, not how the polling is playing. I grant you that it probably does impact people in some ways, but I don't think that's a good thing necessarily. I think it's better if we focus more on the issues, although there's always a pull down to sort of the basest instincts of people to want to characterize people in really simple ways, and maybe to some degree polling is part of that.
All right. Andrew, you want to do it?
Yeah, the answer to the question is, are they good or bad, is yes. It's a question of proportion. They're a mess right now, there's no doubt, and that's an issue, a whole tangle of issues about the quality of the polling that we're getting. But even if they were perfectly accurate, I think we in the media way over-report them. Much too much of our coverage is horse race coverage. Much too much is basically telling people who's ahead and who's behind, and then we tell people who's ahead and who's behind, and after a while we tell them who's ahead and who's behind, and eventually, of course, we turn on whoever's behind and we ask them, why are you behind? Why are you such a loser? Would you not be a loser if you did X or Y or Z? If you were a tree, what kind of loser tree would you be? So we need to change certainly the way we cover them. And we need to give them much less prominence. We certainly shouldn't be commissioning them, in my opinion, as media organizations, because then we have a vested interest in hyping them. But I absolutely do not hold with those people who say, well, we should ban them then. They're just a distraction. They just get people to vote on a bandwagon effect or these kinds of things, which, A, there's very little evidence of, but B, even if there were, that's democracy. In a democracy, people get to vote for any reason they like. And it's not for you or me or anybody to say, well, no, you're voting for the wrong reason. Trust us, so we're going to preserve you from this information that would corrupt your voting calculus, even though we in the media and we in the parties are all madly conducting our own polls in private. So I agree with the general premise that they put everybody on something of a level playing field where we all have that information, and if it's useful information, we can make use of it, and if it's not, we can ignore it.
All right. Next question from the audience right here.
Hi there. My name is Leslie Church, and I'm with Google. My question is, technology today is actually opening up new ways for people to engage or to participate with government, whether that's information sharing, collaborating face-to-face, using apps, e-petitions. There's a whole range of options out there. So to Dave or to Allison, if politics is broken, is technology part of the fix? And if so, how do we get politicians to take these new forms of engagement seriously?
Dave.
I'll take a quick stab at it. I think it's part of the solution. There's a lot of work now around open data and apps to connect people with government, but I think it doesn't replace creating face-to-face contact and people being engaged physically. And when it comes to technology, I just want to remind people that right now in the Canadian Parliament, I'm not allowed to walk in with my phone. I can tweet anywhere in Canada. I asked for permission if I can tweet tonight from the stage. They said, yeah, I can't tweet in my own parliament. I can't even bring in a piece of paper or a pencil, which is very old technology at this point. And you can't bring in a camera because what they do is most of the MPs aren't even there. One MP is speaking, they have one camera fixed on them, and if I brought my camera in, then you would know that no one else is in the room. So we want technology. I want to be able to bring pencil, paper, and my phone into my parliament.
I can't help that.
Those rules don't apply to the MPs on the floor. There, you can see them tweeting all through question period. Speaking of social media, he segues into, by the way, we're trending on Twitter.
I'm tweeting.
Wow.
Are we trending in DC is the question.
We're working on that. Okay, this one comes from Megan Hellstern on Twitter. Both sides of your CBC Asks seems to agree existing process is imperfect to varying degrees. Curious, how would they tweak change? 1 point from each. 1 point from each on how you would tweak change. Who wants to start? Sheila.
I'll jump in, and I hope Monty agrees with this because he is from Alberta. Ralph Klein had a wonderful tool for engaging all of his members of his caucus, and that was if you were a minister and you were bringing in a piece of legislation, you had to get approval and buy-in from your caucus first. And that's the one thing I would do. I would actually allow parliamentary committees to launch bills, and I think that would totally solve a lot of the problems.
Who wants it on the other side?
Go ahead.
1 point.
I would teach civics in schools. If people don't have the tools they need to understand how government works, they're not going to engage as adults. I was in a place called City Hall School in Calgary, which is an amazing model where the kids go in for a whole week and learn about democracy. And I went to visit it, and I interviewed 5 of the kids and said, what did you like about City Hall School? And one of them literally said, well, before I came here, I thought City Hall was just a building with a clock on it. I didn't know there were people in here doing things. So we only do a half credit in Ontario in grade 10. It's not enough. If we don't teach politics, people aren't going to engage.
Here's a good one from Facebook.
Can I just add something from the U.S. perspective?
If you can be very quick.
You guys have it really good here in terms of campaign finance reform. 2 things that I would change in the United States in particular. 1, I would make Election Day an actual national holiday so that everybody could take off and go to the polls and vote. We have huge issues with people standing in lines for hours trying to vote. Secondly, we have so much problem now. Our Supreme Court has essentially gutted regulations around campaign finance laws, and that has been a big problem in the United States. So, you know, this whole public finance thing is a good thing.
Amen.
All right. Here's one from Facebook. Simon Sage. Does protesting actually accomplish anything? Dave?
Well, I think it's a shame that we use the word protest. I mean, when people get together to fight for things they believe in, you know, it's, they're not always against something. Sometimes they're putting forward positive ideas. There's a quote out there that it's the only thing that ever has changed anything, a small group of people coming together. But again, it only works within a system where everything is functioning. Democracy is as weak as its weakest link. And again, if we're using a voting system where when people vote for one thing and get another thing, those protests start to not matter. And those people who put their bodies on the line to be engaged start to get more cynical. Every election we have under our current voting system feeds cynicism and turns people off more and more and more. So yes, it is part of the solution, but it could be such a more effective tool under a fair voting system, which we can only dream of in Canada, but almost every European country has proportional representation.
All right, Monty on that?
Sure. I don't think there's any evidence that people are turned off more and more and more because we have a first-past-the-post system. In fact, we've had many examples in Canada where people start out as protesters and start protest parties. That's happened on many, many occasions. Quebec produces a new political party pretty much every week. So, you know, there are all kinds of levers that people can pull. It takes a lot of work, but it's possible. I've been part of a movement where we did exactly that. I don't think Canadians are victims. I think Canadians have these tools if they want to use them, but remember, it's something like 3% of people who belong to political parties. If you really want to make a change, it takes some work. It means going out and buying a membership and going and getting involved in the nitty-gritty of party politics. It's not easy, but it's how you enact real change.
Alberta's had its share of political parties, too. New ones, they keep popping up. All right, it's crunch time. It's where each side now makes its final pitch to you to impact those numbers we saw at the beginning. Remember, yes, 69, no, 31. How are those numbers going to change when you vote at the end of this evening? And the end of the evening is rapidly coming up. Each side has 2 minutes only, for their closing argument. And once again, it starts with the yes side.
Well, we all seem to agree that there's room for improvement and that some kind of reform is needed. The question is, are we ever going to see reforms happen, or are we just going to talk about it for decades? For me, tonight is about one thing: establishing a proper diagnosis, because you'll never get the right prescription without the right diagnosis. When a doctor finds a tumor, she'll sit down with the patient and say, listen, I've got bad news. We found a tumor, but now that we know it's there, we're going to try and fix it. Imagine a doctor downplaying the diagnosis just because they don't want the patient to feel bad about it. Yeah, all their tests look good. You just need some rest. Go home, have some vitamin C. Don't be fooled by these doctors who are just trying to make us feel better about our political mess, because what they're doing is nothing less than sentencing all of us to an eternity of political suffering. We can do so much better than this. I've been on a research tour across Canada, crowdsourcing 100 remedies for a broken democracy. From participatory budgets in Halifax, to campaign finance reform in Vancouver, to rank ballots across Ontario, people are talking about democratic renewal. Because let's face it, we were all born into a culture of cynicism, top-down leadership, and we so often feel disempowered. But when our kids grow up, we want them to find their voice, have confidence in that voice, and interact with a political system that values and respects that voice. But the first step is admitting that we have a problem. Acknowledging that politics is broken is not a declaration of defeat or failure. It's an invitation to raise our expectations, focus on solutions, and transform our collective cynicism into something positive. And that process begins here, and it begins tonight, and it begins with you. Thank you.
Well done.
Aisha, Monty, and I come from 3 different perspectives. I'm an Eastern liberal. He's a Western conservative. She's from the United States. We all have different perspectives, but we are united around one belief. And David just reaffirmed it tonight. Every single method he's crowdsourcing is about engaging the political process and change. And there is only one place that can make real change. It's in the political process, and Monty and Aisha are going to tell you exactly how it happened in their circumstances.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Sheila. First of all, I just have to say that, you know, when those members of Parliament aren't sitting in the chamber when Dave wanders in, it's because they're in those committee meetings. They're poring over that legislation that Andrew feels doesn't get scrutinized. But I can tell you, we live in a fantastic country. And it's because we have this representative democracy that has served us so extraordinarily well for all these years. It doesn't mean that we can't have change. We should have change. But that change should occur organically, and it should occur because Canadians decide to get involved and make that change happen. It's within everyone's power to do exactly that, and that's precisely why I am on the no side tonight.
Exactly. All of that. And I would just say one last thing is that when we lead with this attitude that the system is already broken, then we lead with this very hopeless sense that there's no even reason to be bothered in dealing with it because it doesn't matter. That, as we've identified here, is far from the truth. Our opponents would completely agree that this debate is worthwhile because the system is worthwhile. And we have to have hope that by us continuing to participate in it, that that's going to continue to change it to be the best that it can be.
All right. This has been an experiment for us on many levels. As you know, the election is set for October 19th. We want to experiment with different vehicles in this year to involve you in our coverage of politics in Canada. So this was night one of that experiment. And over the next 6-7 months, we've got lots of opportunities to come up with new ideas, different ways to do the same kind of thing. So we hope that this has been interesting for you as well as it has been for us. But thank you. We know there's been a lot of online action on this tonight, and I regret for those who sent in questions both on social media and here in the room that we didn't get to all of your questions. We only got to a few. But as we said, it's an experiment. We'll work on it and figure out ways to get more of you involved in our debates as we move through this next interesting 6 or 7 months. Crunch time is your voting one more time. Unfortunately, I won't be able to hang around for it because I have this other job that I've got to do. But that's why Steve Patterson has been practicing his second half jokes in the back here, and he's with us once again to take you through the voting for all that. Thank you very much, and thank you, panel.
Thank you. Mr. Peter Mansbridge, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't that amazing? Wow. And he just said my name. I just won CBC Fantasy Camp. How about a nice hand for both our teams, all of our debaters, the yes side and the no side. Well done, excellent points. A little more fact than funny, but some good funny moments, I thought. Unfortunately, this side had some microphone issues. I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened, but
Microphones are broken.
I'm not supposed to.
Next debate.
I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but I just have a favorite line. Is the glass 1% full or 99% empty? I just wish you had this mic so you could have dropped it. Because you can't drop a headset mic because you'll pull off your ear. You'll hurt yourself, seriously. Okay. We are going to list the results of the post-show vote that you guys did in just a minute. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce the General Manager and Editor-in-Chief of CBC News and Centers, Jennifer Maguire.
Good evening, everybody. I know you're anxiously awaiting the results, so I promise I'll be very brief. I think my takeaway today is really that in addition to the power of humor in a debate, there is incredible power in conversation. And it's totally appropriate that this event takes place at the public broadcaster, and through the election campaign, we're not only committed to covering the issues, but also engaging Canadians in the act of democracy. And we'll have much more on that to come in the weeks ahead. I just have to say, thank you. I just want to say a thank you to the CBC News team, to Fiona Conway, Michael Gruzak, and all the people who worked very hard to put this event together, as well as our CBC Communications team. This is a bit of a departure for us in terms of organizing outreach events of this nature, but there'll be many more to come. And one final plug, that we will be doing an event locally with Anne-Marie Medawake and our CBC Toronto team on the future of this city. So on the 31st, come again to the atrium here for another event, talking about this city in the same kind of way, engaging with Canadians in a participatory and interactive way. And of course, on election day, this is the place to be for live coverage of the results of the campaign. So thank you for coming, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, I just have a little tidbit of information, but first of all, in case I wasn't clear, and I might not have been, we need you guys to place your votes now
No, we don't.
for either the yes
It's
or the
already
no
voted
side. Sheila, this is how mistakes happen in polls if we don't get everyone voting, right, Monty?
Yes,
Get involved,
yes.
for God's sakes. So,
I
Just
thought
to-
we had it all fixed. That's what I was saying.
Just
Sorry,
to review,
Just kidding.
Just to review, if you'd like to vote for Team Yes, press number 1. If you'd like to vote for Team No, press number 2. If you're watching at home, don't press anything. You'll change the channel. So we'll give you a couple more minutes to do, not a couple more minutes. We'll give you literally 13 seconds to do that. First of all, I'd like to tell a funny story. You know, a lot of people think everyone recognizes me. I was on the way up to my cottage. Oh, you'll have to write the punchline for yourself. All right. Just so you guys know the effectiveness of this is the first event that we've done of this, and we hope to do many more. This is trending on Twitter ahead of the fact that one member of One Direction left the band today. This show is already more popular than one member of One Direction. And here in Canada, that's enough for us, Aisha. That is enough for us. If we can be better than just one member of One Direction, we've done our job. So, we're going to post the vote results right now and see which was swayed the best. Then we'll announce the winning team. Now, 76% says the politics is broken. 24 says no. So you guys gained 7%. And you guys win. But the great news is that this is a Canadian show, so you win nothing at all. There's no prize.
Not even a coffee.
Everyone is welcome to stay after right here and join us for a reception in the atrium. Thanks to all of you for joining us on our first CBC Asks. We want to do many more. Thanks for coming out. My name's Steve. Good night.
Oh, my God. Well, we tried. I thought we did